Freedom Talk Live. I'm your host, Acoustic Stevo. And on this podcast, we're going to talk everything freedom. So, right now I'm broadcasting to Vim and to YouTube. And I am attempting to see if I could figure out a way to get the chat in here. That'd be really cool. It looks like this is my orientation, but let me check something real quick. Settings. You know what? I don't see it. But anyways, I'm not going to get all hung up on that. We're just going to have our first episode right now. And we're just going to lay out what this podcast is going to be about. And let me get something a little more visual on the screen for us here. Actually, I'm going to check just to make sure. Okay, everything is going good. So, let me pull up some pictures. Actually, I wanted to test something. I'll test it right now, alright? Because I want to kind of be able to bring up my camera sometimes and go ahead and use my camera, right? Alternate between some things. And you know, be able to use my phone here to do everything I want to do, which some of it's going to be on camera, some of it's going to be off camera. So I'm going to switch over real quick and check that YouTube because it's on like a lag thing. So if I see my face, I know this is working. Bear with me while I kind of get some of this stuff going. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh. It's going. Okay. So it's working, but it looks like it's sideways if I do that. Which is fine, I just know to do the camera a different orientation, right? Looks like this whole thing's going to be a different orientation. Oh, wait. Okay, so stuff kind of... I'll have to watch it back later and to understand exactly how everything goes, but the first thing I want to do is... No, I don't want to get into that, but I will. A little bit, alright?
Organic Valley is a cooperative where 2,000 small family farmers work together to make...
I'm just going to show you a bit of this video just so we have something to talk about. Because this is somebody else's video, and I don't want this podcast to really take other people's material. But we're going to talk about what this is here in a minute after we get this initial clip.
Because you just ran that stop sign over there.
Am I in a car?
What's that?
Am I in a car?
No, but you're on a bicycle and you're still required to stop.
You were over there. You didn't even see me.
Okay, now I'm going to fast
I did.
forward.
That's why I'm here.
This guy's funny right here.
That's not safe.
There it is, guys. The walk of shame.
Hey, I'm good.
I'm going to go back a little bit.
Unless I've committed a crime. Now, he can't tell me what crime that I've committed.
He won't even tell him what stop sign he supposedly ran, which I know it wasn't this.
Is that correct? In order to ID, you have to commit a crime, right? Yes?
Or violation, yeah.
Or violation.
Or a
And
violation.
I kept asking, he was like, okay, you committed an infraction. Okay, what stop sign did you run? He won't say. Then I'm like, didn't run this one. Like I said, he's a...
Wait, now it's like they have, like if they have a picture of my bike.
It matches the description of we've had several bicycles stolen.
Oh, now this is about a stolen bike? First it was about a stop sign, now it's about a stolen bike?
This bike right here is...
Okay, but he didn't stop me for that.
Okay, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No. You can have multiple reasons for stopping somebody, okay?
Alright. So you can go and check that video out if you want. But I've been watching several of these, all different kinds. And it's kind of what I want to talk about for a little while here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull something up on Google. I'm going to pull up the First Amendment, right? Because that's what most of these videos are called. If you go into YouTube and you type in First Amendment audit, I'm not really going to type that in because I'm just wanting to bring up the First Amendment, alright? Here we go. Let's just read it real quick. Because this is Freedom Talk Live. And, man, I wish I could see the chat. I'm going to have to kind of figure that out if I can. Because this is multi-streaming. I might be able to figure that out here in a little while. But for now, I'm just going to get this going. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Alright, that's a pretty important amendment, if you ask me. I think it's number one for a reason. And these videos I've been watching, they're called First Amendment audits, and what they're doing is they're going out with their cameras, and they're on public property, so that way they can't get charged with trespassing. And they're recording in states where it's legal, public officials in public buildings. And the public is not responding very well to it. They all, pretty much every single time, get the cops called on them. And then the cops come out and try to tell them to leave. And then they go through all this rigmarole, and it ends up being that they have every right to record. And this one that I just pulled up was a little different, but it kind of falls in line. It kind of gets to my main theme, which is that we live in a police state. Like, we really do have to recognize that we live in a police state. And what that breaks down to is that our law enforcement is out of control. They've become highway robbers in a lot of circumstances. They don't use their common sense, God-given gift to discern between where they need to interject their authority and where it's just quibbling with the general public and trying to get them into something litigious that they can reach in their wallet and pull money out for Big Brother, basically. I mean, that's an easy way to describe it, and it's pretty accurate what I just said. That's pretty much what our law enforcement has been reduced to in a lot of situations. Now, I'm not saying I don't respect the spirit behind the job, to serve and protect, but that when that's not being done, for the most part, you have to question you have to question it. You can't just, bite on the whole thing that, law enforcement is above reproach and that the whole system is above reproach and that the government is our friend and that our city governments are our friends and that our state governments are our friends. That's not what they are. They're a behemoth that wants to feast on whatever bones they can get. And we are the bones, all right? That's pretty much what they are, every single one of them. And the officers, their job is to go out and find ways to either ticket us or somehow get us in the system, in the court system sometimes, to pay for things. That's really what it is, because they can't get enough tax money. So they have to resort to things like pulling you over just because you run a stop sign on your bicycle, right? Even if no one's around. Now, that's not in the spirit of what a law enforcement officer is, and you'll get all these people defending it left and right, saying, well, and the stop sign, that he broke the law. Well, first off, it wasn't a criminal offense. It was an infraction, is what the officer kept calling it, right? It's not in the spirit of what a law enforcement officer is. So that's where the be-all, end-all of the conversation, in my opinion, should end. Because the only reason for laws is not just to have laws where we get in trouble when we do something wrong that's not even wrong. Like, in actuality, if you're riding a bike through a neighborhood and there's no traffic and you can hear, and you can see, and you just go right through it, it's a little different than a car because you're in an enclosed space. You don't have the ability a lot of times to hear, and plus you need some kind of traffic laws because a car is a lot more dangerous. Now, in that video, it was argued by the cop at one point that a person running a stop sign is dangerous as well because, you could cause somebody to swerve or to avoid you, because you didn't stop, blah, blah, blah. This is all just things to get you to bite on their hook that they're dangling, for you to bite and to accept and digest their propaganda. Straight up propaganda. Don't do it. Don't get me wrong, obey the law so you don't end up in jail, unless, of course, the law that you're obeying goes against a higher law, and then don't obey it because it's just a law. It's not real. It's just something that we made up, and it changes from state to city to whatever, county to whatever. These laws are ridiculous. We have way too many of them. Way too many of them. And we've set up the church of government, and we've set our law enforcement officers as the priests of the government, and they're beyond reproach, right? And we all want to say, well, cops are there, we got to respect them and thank them for their duty, and blah, 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 blah. They put themselves in danger, blah, blah. These are all hooks that they're putting down to bait you so that you can swallow the thing they're trying to feed you because it's so noxious that a normal person would want nothing to do with it. But they put like marshmallows on the outside of the bait to make it more appealing or whatever. That's all that is fluff garbage. Alright? Yeah, that's what a law enforcement officer should be, someone who serves and protects. And in a lot of circumstances, that's what they actually do. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't do that ever, and that they don't have some amount of bravery for that part of the job, for participating and putting their life on the line. But you know what? I'm a truck driver. I put my life on the line every day driving this truck through traffic to make a paycheck. That's all they're doing, is putting their life on the line to make a paycheck, especially when you see how litigious a lot of them are. It becomes apparent that that's all it is to them, all right? My job is just as dangerous as theirs, statistically. So, for me, the whole, when you serve and you protect, that's what you do. You don't go around looking for situations to line the pocketbooks, the coffers, so to speak. In my estimation, a lot of officers today are like the tax collectors in the Bible and in the Gospels that everybody detested because they went around and collected money for government. It's pretty much the same thing. All right? And, it's... This might be a bad way to start off this podcast because I probably turned a lot of people off right then and there with my viewpoint on this whole situation. But it's important when you're going to talk about freedom, because the number one thing standing between human beings on this earth and freedom is the police state. And we live in one. And we have to recognize it. Okay? We have to recognize that the number one thing standing in the way of human freedom is not that there are bad guys out there. It's that we have all these arbitrary laws that can make criminals out of good, honest people. And that we do this, and we put them in jail, and we ruin their lives. We take their freedoms away. And it's being done all the time. I mean, all you have to do is do a little bit of digging and you'll find out what I'm saying is true. It's not like a rare thing that happens. If you go and you look in the prison systems, there are people in there for victimless crimes, a lot of them, where there was no victim, nothing happened, nobody got hurt, but yet they're in prison for years. This happens all the time because they broke some law. It's got to stop. We've got to address it for what it is. We've got to talk about it. We live in a police state. I'm going to pull up another amendment. It's going to be the 4th Amendment, all right? And I would argue we're losing our First Amendment, but we already have lost our Fourth Amendment. So let's read it, and I'll talk about how we've lost it. All right. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. All right, now, our law enforcement officers do not practice the spirit of this. They want to find any way possible to search you. That's what this, this First Amendment audit thing should be called First and Fourth Amendment audit, if you ask me. Because, yeah, they most of the time, technically, they stick by the law if you know the law. But a lot of people are out there, they don't know the law, so they're being violated all the time. They're being pulled over, and their cars are being searched for no reason, except for whatever reason the officer decides to give them, right? I see it all the time driving down the road. And all these people getting pulled over, and their stuff's being searched, and there's all these animals out there. And do we really need that? Do we? And I guess you could make the argument that if you don't have it, the bad guys, they'll traffic all kinds of drugs, and everything will get worse. It's already pretty bad, and we got it, right? This hasn't helped. This has been going on for a long time, and the heroin epidemic that we all hear about, it hasn't gotten better because of all this stuff. Do you really think that it would be worse if we didn't have this stuff? No. People are going to do drugs, right? They're going to do drugs. If you put them in jail for the drugs that they're going to do, it's not going to be helpful. Maybe there should be some kind of institutions to deal with addicts that are a danger to society, and they perform some kind of non-victimless crime, one that actually has a victim. But we are pursuing all these things, and we're giving away our freedoms left and right. So I'm going to tell you how we've lost our Fourth Amendment freedom, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. Well, we had a whistleblower years back, and he somehow became public enemy number one to our government when he told us that the NSA was surveilling Americans and collecting our data via our phone calls, our internet history, you name it, right? And that there's a database where they store all this stuff. And because he blew the whistle on that, and now the public knows, he's public enemy number one. But what we should have been looking at is the fact that the government is surveilling us, right? They're violating our Fourth Amendment. They're, right here, this word, and effects. Our effects are our emails, are our phone calls. We live in a digital age. So our effects nowadays are digital, all right? And we have a right to privacy in those things. But the government just bulldozes over it with, lots of things. And we let this Constitution that I value, and I'm pretty sure you do so much, just be trampled on left and right, and we ignore things. This podcast is going to be about not ignoring things. It's going to be about not sugarcoating things to make them acceptable. For instance, that cops are the new tax collectors. All right? They're the new money grab. That's what they are. That's what they spend most of their time doing. They don't spend most of their time catching real criminals. We wouldn't need as many of them, first off. If that's what they were doing, we wouldn't need that many of them, right? The whole system's screwed up. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not blaming cops for how screwed up the system is, because the job's there and they're going to get paid to do it, so there's going to be somebody that will go and do that job. What I'm saying is maybe that job shouldn't be there. Or maybe it should be more well-defined and more focused on what it should be and not what it is right now. Because I'm not going to glorify cops until they deserve the glory, all right? Straight up. Until their only function is to serve and protect, I'm not going to stand by and act like everything's cool and kosher, because it's not. We live in a police state. Get that through your head, people. We live in a police state. We've given up our rights. People, you know, when people walk into a public area and they start filming, and the whole general public's eyes get like the size of silver dollars, and they just can't believe it, and it bothers them so much that they have to call the cops to put an end to it because somebody's doing something out of the norm. That should speak volumes that we've kind of evolved into a state of 1984. Everyone's on the lookout to turn somebody else in for something. Yeah, you know, man, it's done a doozy on us. 9/11, that whole thing they pulled on us, it's done its due diligence. All right? So I'm not going to sit back and act like I don't live in the world that I actually live in. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to do it. And that's what this podcast's about. And episode number 1 is going to be kind of short because I just kind of wanted to introduce the podcast and what it is, kind of get in and out, kind of show you, give you a little taste, so to speak. So I need to work on some things. I need to figure out if I can get a chat going. I'm really happy that I can do the multi-streaming. I'm happy that I can go in and show you guys my face, right? At will. I can say hi. I can go searching on the internet. I can pull stuff up. That's what we're going to be doing on this podcast. We're going to be just having some fun, people. Looking at some things. Having conversations. Please, if you disagree with me or if you agree with me, please leave me a comment. Please leave me a like. Please share this podcast so that we can get a real conversation going on about this stuff. Because it's not that I feel like I have to be right or that I am right on everything. I could be wrong. Set me straight. But what I see and what the narrative is are two different things. So I'm going to speak to that because one of them's wrong. The narrative or me. So let's figure this out together on Freedom Talk Podcast. So have a good one, everyone. Thanks for coming by. You know, I'm going to see if I can find a way to do the chat. I think I know how. I can go in here, see if anybody's been chatting. Alright, so let's look at the chat. Here we go, Studio Geek was in here. So I guess I could kind of leave the... he's going to be live streaming at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's a really cool kid. He's really bright. Go check him out. And I just wanted to kind of see that. This might be a screen that I come back to, and I'll just come back here and check the chat from time to time as I do the podcast. So I think everything went pretty good. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you again soon.